Strange Adventures issue 6, Tom King with Mitch Gerads and Doc Shaner. Obviously, this is the known quantity because we're halfway through this now. And where to begin with this one? This is once again split into two. You've got the main present day story, and you've got the war story. And I kept having to remind myself that the story that we get from the war is the kind of the curated one, because I kind of felt like it was revealing more stuff as it was going that we didn't know. That, you know, maybe it wasn't going like down the darkest path that it can do, because there's clearly more to learn and more that, you know, Terrific's hinting at. Because Terrific, the main plot of this is that Terrific and Alana are meeting up to talk about stuff.
Yeah, that's the bulk of the issue, probably about 70%.
Yeah, and then, but then we get, because that second page, which is a 2-page spread of just Alana and Adam, like, you know, looking out at the horizon on Ran, is just beautiful. It's gorgeous stuff.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And they're basically gearing up for the fight, right? This is kind of them getting into the war. They tried to make peace briefly with the Pict, but it doesn't work, so it becomes this fight. I actually love the callback later, because there's a moment here where they kind of count down 3, 2, 1 as they're shooting the Pict. And then later on, when Alana's with Terrific and she throws a snowball at the bell, she says 3, 2, 1. And it kind of was this indication to me that she's still in a war. You know, maybe not in quite the same way, but she's still thinking like that.
Yeah, but this was such a fascinating issue in terms of what Alana may or may not know, after all.
Yeah, this was the thing, because I think we always assumed that she was, if anything, the one who was more knowledgeable about stuff, and she was keeping things from Adam. But at the end of this issue, it kind of suggests that maybe Adam's keeping something from her.
Yeah.
All the stuff in the snow, the art from Gerads is wonderful. You've got Alana and Terrific talking about various things. They go and get a drink, then they go to, you know, they go to the bell and they talk about stuff. Terrific, you know, brings up the poem, you know, No Man is an Island. Which Alana very, you know, harshly kind of says, nah, everyone's an island. And it's this very cynical view of life, essentially, that she's maybe going to have to learn to get over it some way, I imagine, by the end of this. But maybe one of the more important conversations is them kind of becoming more honest about what happened to each of their kids. Because, you know, Terrific also lost a child. It wasn't born yet. You know, talks about how his pregnant wife was in a car crash. And, you know, I actually really like this moment from him, like where he says he feels guilty, but not because he like wasn't there, or because he you know, that didn't maybe he suggested to, you know, go for a drive or whatever, but more that deep down he's not even sure if he was, maybe because he didn't want the kid in the first place. Like, that was something he already knew he felt. So he doesn't know if he's a little relieved that he doesn't actually have to be a father when he didn't want to be, and he feels guilty for that kind of, like, even just having that in his head for a moment is something that he feels guilt over. And rightfully so. It's a really complex set of emotions, understandably.
And it's been a thing driving him for this whole book.
Yeah.
You know, going back to that first major issue of his.
Yeah. So, and Alana kind of just sort of says, oh, it's simple, the Pict are merciless, and doesn't go into more detail until he shares more, and then she goes into it and talks about how Adam came back kind of different, and he was sort of held for days, and he's never talks about what they did to him, like how bad it was, how much they tortured him, or whatever. Which does, you know, and whenever we cut to the Ran stuff, it's always this glory of battle, like him and Alana, like, I mean, fighting.
Even you talked about that 2-page spread at the start of them, you know, looking over the city. We have it repeated again almost here towards the end, where it's, you know, the same thing. They're sat looking over the view, and, you know, they go, "Oh, Adam," you know, but it's over the war this time. You know, all the big robot sort of ships are all there, and there's destruction and fire, and it's, you know, definitely romanticizing, you know, this horrific act.
Yeah,
which is again part of the story that we have to remember.
Absolutely. I think the reason why I was saying that it felt like they were, you know, doing more stuff is there's a moment at the end of the war story in this issue where he chooses to, like, or they get knocked down, and this is when he gets taken. So presumably this is what she was talking about when he does get, you know, taken, because they're both knocked out at the end of the issue and he's dragged away. That's kind of the cliffhanger. Although I actually think the cliffhanger in the present day stuff is more effective, because where she's left standing in the cold, literally standing in the cold.
Yeah.
Both
there's a great moment,
both literally and figuratively, where Terrific's, you know, questioning things, and she's finally getting into more detail about how you know, he went out with Alana and he came back and he informed her of what happened to the daughter, and Terrific just kind of says, well, did you bury the body? And she's like, there was no body, we just had a monument made for her. He's like, like, so you
and then he goes, oh, I guess I do believe you, because that was a part of the earlier conversation. And
so it's this idea where he's essentially implying that you never saw a body, right? Maybe you should talk to Adam about what really happened. And that's the moment where, you know, like she's standing out there. He says you should go, it's cold out there. And she's just standing there. And it's almost like this is the first time she's ever even considered the idea that he might have lied in some fashion about what happened.
And if he did, which let's go under the assumption that he did, it means, okay, she's not dead. Is she alive? Did she side with the Picts? Like, what exactly happened? Did they just kidnap her?
Did he offer her for peace? Like, was she like a bargaining chip?
Yeah. Did they make him do something to her, like after the torture? Like, we just don't know.
Yeah. Well, the torture was a separate.
No, I know, but I mean, maybe they tortured him then as well.
Sure.
For all I know.
But it does make me wonder though, like Terrific's talk about his guilt and how he felt guilty about how he never really wanted a kid. Like, I do wonder if that's something where he recognizes something in Adam, something similar. Like, did Adam, like, the books, you know, the story of the war that's coming from the memoir is presenting him as this loving father who, and they both love their daughter, and she's the light of the world. But in reality, is it different? Did he not want a daughter? Was it more strained, a relationship? Does he recognize something in that? And that's just assuming that it's even similar to Terrific. Maybe it's going to be completely different, but it's just the idea that he recognizes that Strange has a more conflicted sense of guilt or something that's different than just, oh, the daughter died tragically and they couldn't prevent it, and that's it. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, like the layers of this, because like I say, for issues now, we've been assuming Alana's like, behind it all, being the manipulative wife, and I think the book has intentionally led us down that path. I think we were making those assumptions out of nowhere, but this here kind of is like, well, maybe not. Maybe, I mean, she's definitely still manipulated in some regards and got a plan, but when it comes to this big key element, maybe she really does know nothing.
That point I made about the snowball and her saying the same thing she did when she was shooting the Pict, I think that maybe shows why she is so manipulative. Is to her, she's still fighting a war. Everything's strategizing. Everything is putting pieces in place and all that stuff. But maybe
talking about Latitude when she was on the balcony.
Yes, and then maybe that's kind of similar to her looking out at the planet, in this issue. But I wonder if, like, the point here is that, okay, she has her own problems because she's not really left that mindset and she's not really accepted that she's at peace or she should be at peace. But maybe this idea that this memoir that's all glossied up and hides the truth is not just hiding it from the public, it's also hiding it from her. Like, maybe she doesn't, maybe to her it's not actually that far-fetched, most of this. Maybe, okay, it's glossing over, it's maybe making some of the more visceral battle stuff a bit lighter, and she knows that was a bit more dark or serious or whatever. But the idea being that the most serious thing that's the lie about the daughter, is something that she actually also is in the dark.
It is being lied to about.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. I fact, hell, this panel of her standing in the snow, that full page spread, might even be my favorite page of the whole book so far, just because of the impact that it has at this point.
It's up there, and that conversation with, out by the bell, showing how, I don't even want to say ruthless she is, but how self-aware she is of her own abilities. She talks about how, her dad says she's the third smartest person on Ran. He's first, Adam's the second, and then she's third. And she's like, I don't think that. I think she tells when you lap people, you can look behind, but just be that far ahead. And this idea that she obviously thinks that she is orders of magnitude smarter than both of them is kind of scary and almost villainous, right? With the way she kind of thinks of it like that.
Or maybe it's even the idea that this is foreshadowing the idea that she thinks she's smarter than both of them. But if Adam's been lying to her this whole time, then is she that smart? Like, is she smarter than him?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's maybe kind of foreshadowing that a little bit in that scene too. So no. Because she says she's really cynical. She says, in the end, we're all islands. Going back to the poem, and no one asks who the bell is tolling for. no one even hears it ring, is a really, really disconnected and jaded thing to say.
She's been completely defeated by the war and everything else. Maybe even her daughter was the breaking point.
Yeah, I mean, again, if this book is, in a lot of the ways, the last book was about anxiety and about depression and all those things. This book is more about how the war has affected this pair of people, this couple, both of whom in this case fought in the war, and both of whom are dealing with a partner who have fought in the war. So
yeah,
it's dealing with a lot of these aftershocks.
A really strong link with the parenthood as well. It obviously was a huge part of Mr. Miracle, and this is in a very different way. This is dealing with the loss of a child, whereas that was dealing with the birth of a child.
And yeah, because Mr. Miracle, the birth of the child was kind of the big hopeful thing in that book. That was the thing. That was the light that kind of like sort of gave him strength to kind of ultimately come through. And that was like something that bonded them and made them stronger. And here it's maybe the potential that that can also be the thing that breaks people apart if it goes down that path, like it maybe does here.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, no. So surprise. Strange Adventures was fantastic again. Obviously they are gorgeous. Going back to I talk about this coloring change a lot, but I talked about that first 2-page spread where they're looking out at the planet. It's a lot more blue. The time at the end when it's the war, it's a lot of red because there's explosions everywhere. Really simple, but it's effective. Also, was that dinosaur in the first one? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I think that's more because the first one they're looking out over the city, and the second one is the war field.
I'll be honest, the dinosaur just blends in with the coloring so much that I don't think I noticed it was a dinosaur looking thing until now. I thought it was just like part of the mountains.
It's just because obviously we've seen like a lot of lizard creatures.
Yes.
In this book already, so I guess it's just one of those.
Yeah. A lot of the battle stuff is very much it's very visceral in the sense that it feels like they're at the brink of defeat, but they ultimately seems like they're going to win in the end before he's kidnapped. But it definitely feels like someone who would be writing the story to like try and make it feel like they're almost going to lose until that last second when they're going to win.
It is very much a war movie.
Yes.
And again, it's this romanticized ideal, like storytelling version of it, where it's got to get dark before they win. That's your act 2, so to speak, and this is following that same structure, and that's kind of the point.
So there you go. What are you giving Strange Adventures issue 6?
That's a 9.
I will also give it a 9. So there we go.